All right, so in this video, we're gonna start putting these pistons in. I've got a little bit of fresh 520 motor oil to lube up the wrist pins. That's the recommendation from the machine shop that pressed the pins onto the rods for me. We're gonna put some assembly lube on these fresh bearing shells. Everything else has been cleaned with brake cleaner and then acetone to make sure that it's as clean as it can. We're gonna be using this Brian Tooley Racing ring compressor specifically for that bore size. I have seen some really cool new ones that are the aluminum like this, but they still have a band and a little bit of a cut. So it's kind of a universal size. I think it goes from 4" to 4.095. Pretty wide range, but apparently they work a heck of a lot better than the old band kind, but that's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna get this prepped and we're gonna show sliding one in. All right, so we got the bore lubed with some PB Blaster. I also lubed the inside of the compressor with it, so just a real light film of oil. This is seated down. There's a little lip that kind of locks it in place. The notch facing forward is facing front of the engine. The crank is in bottom dead center for that piston. We can kind of guide it with our hands, make sure it's not going to hit anything. So that's about as far as I'm going to be able to tap it down with just my fingers. Stuff out of the way. I'm going to use the rubber side. Okay, now it's definitely in. Keep guiding it so we don't nick. Okay, that's fully seated down. The hammer tapping is about a little bit heavier than if you were just dropping the hammer down. Does not take a lot of force at all. That's now all the way in there. Now we just have to repeat that 7 times. Word of note, my rods and rod caps are stamped with the number to make sure everything lines up and stays up. Piston 1 and rod 1 is going to go into hole 1 and they're all going to line up. You take them out, make sure that they're stamped. If yours are not stamped, don't do a bunch of them and have a bunch of caps sitting here. Turn it over and just set the cap on. I'm going to do that right now anyways, because then you want to turn the crank again and check that. So let me get this cap on. All right, so we're going to get some assembly lube. The other bearing. This side is the number side for me, stamped 1. This side is stamped 1, so they're going to line up. The tangs also line up, so you can tell by that. the ARP bolts, but they need some ultra torque. I always say the surface of the nut as well. Super messy. Use gloves. I've got some really cheap ones right now that keep ripping. Need to buy some better ones, thicker ones. I'm not gonna torque these. Just gonna get them a little bit tight. All right. All the pistons loaded up. Kind of hard to do this and hold the camera, but so now we're going to get our pulley installation tools so we can get the cam sprocket on and the crank sprocket. Crank sprocket has 3 different shaped. You can see this is rounder, this is pointed, kind of like a roof of a house, and this is square. It's for advancing or retarding the timing, and the rounded one is for stock or zero. The camshaft, Comcam Zettelbrock recommends doing 0, so that's what we're gonna. Okay, so for timing gear that goes on the crank snout, we're using the rounded one. It's 0, timing mark straight up, lines up with this tooth. So you have to kind of line it up with your eyes along with the keyway. Get it started a little bit. This one I believe they are press-on fits, but I have seen some people online able to just slide them on. I can't slide mine on. So what I did is I used the snout bolt to hold on the balancer, pressed it in the rest of the way. They do sell a tool. All it looks like is a bigger socket, something that's diameter around that. So that's what we're going to use. All right, so 3 sockets that are the same size. You can see they're not on the inside lip. We're going to give that a try. You can see it pressing on. We're already way past it now. One of them fell out. But that's what I'm going to do until the big boy socket that I have, that's a lot longer, can go on. Okay, so that's on as far as it'll go. Keyway came out underneath that socket. This one comes in and out. Time to switch. All right, so this is what we ended up using. 3 smaller deep sockets taped together, and they went on no problem. I had this bad boy, I don't remember, I think from one of the old Volkswagens that I had. I'm not really sure. It's definitely wide enough, but obviously, as you can see, not deep enough before the taper starts hitting on the snout. So, improvise. These worked out great. Did not have to buy a $30 tool and wait however long to get it, or run down to the auto parts store and hope that they had one to rent one, and just did that right now. So I forgot to say, we're going to put the thrust plate on first. Labeled back, side, bottom. And get some oil through this channel to the front through the thrust area. Threw out the old bolts on accident. They're 1/4 inch by 20 thread pitch, 5/8 inch long, grade 8. I got button head because they're the same height as the hex head, and they didn't have the hex head. We're also going to use some orange thread locker. It's supposed to be as strong as red, but easy to remove like blue, so we're going to run it in there. Back, bottom. And these go to 8 to 12, so we're going to run it to 10. All right, so round 2, oil pump on, oil pump shaft, pickup tube, nut, all torqued down. This is timing cover number 2, the one that came with the engine. These 2 1/4 inch bolts stripped the second time I put the pan on after test fit, When I torqued them down, they stripped. This is a brand new one from Speedway Motors. It's an Engine Quest. You got the fuel pump block-off plate installed. There is a front sump oil pan hole for the dipstick that comes with a plug. Plug is in there. It's plugged and has some orange Loctite on it. So now we're going to put the oil pan on again. All right, we got the timing cover installed. We got the harmonic balancer pressed on. This is torqued down to 80 pound-feet. The range is 70 to 90, so went right in the middle. Mechanical fuel pump block-off plate, since this is going to be EFI. We got our high volume oil pump. These are torqued down to 25. These are 20. Put this at 20. Couldn't find a number for it in the book, so they all have orange thread locker on it. One piece oil pan gasket comes with these standoffs to help hold it in place. Put your oil pan on, all the other bolts, and then you take these out, put the last 4 on. It's starting to come together. I have the water pump and most of the bolts for that, but the pulley kit I'm looking at ordering will likely have new bolts for those brackets. So I'm hoping between all of that, it will be complete. All right, so I actually found it easier to get the oil pan slid on without those studs, but your mileage may vary. Everything for the holes is lined up pretty close. Should be able to get it in pretty easy. These go on at 15 pound-feet. A one-piece Velcro oil pan and some Play-Doh. I'm gonna measure the clearance from the pickup tube off the bottom of the pan. Oil pan back on, torqued. Harmonic balancer back on, torqued. We're going to flip it over and get the new stand on so it can go on the ground and keep going.